is such a Kenyan or whatever. Okay. Has it said?
Yes, you are a link, sir.
Okay.
Yes, it says so.
Yeah, Zoom takes long to update me. Okay, welcome. But I must give a shout out to Sabitina, someone, Kau Bakir. You are the first one here, way before everyone. Welcome. But welcome the people on this side of the oceans and people on the other sides of the oceans. Today's conversation is on quiet quitting and quiet firing. And as usual, we will open the floor. This is direct translation from Sakafu. Saya, you're up. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's one famous story, very, very famous. It actually has become, a story is famous when it becomes an expression. It's about mice coming together and deciding, the way the cat is treating us, we need to sort it out. And so all manner of proposals come, and the one that was getting the most traction was, we need to fix a bell on the cat, and so that every time it's approaching, we can get awareness and scamper for safety. And yeah, the mouse that had come with that idea was about to be awarded a Nobel Prize before that idea was put to a screeching halt by a little mouse. The version of the story I had is even that little mouse was almost being reprimanded, like, what do you want to say? The big people have already talked. And the little mouse asked that question, the famous question, like, who's going to place that bell on the neck of the cat? And as I say, the rest is history. Up to today, the cat is unbelled and the mice keep dying. And of course, the story has been used to make different kind of applications, different conclusions. But for today's discussion, I just want to imagine whether it's fear or lack of creativity or bravery, whatever. The mice were present. They were very vocal. They knew the problem was there, but left it unaddressed. The most they gave to the cause was lip service. But when the rubber met the road, they withdrew. Very clear, almost deliberately said things like very present physically, very vocal, very contributing. But when they needed to give 100%, they gave something closer to zero than they did. And the same is true. One of the very enduring, there are those family stories you're told over and over and over and over until it becomes, part of the family story, is about one of my, in Africa, the relationships are complex until at times you don't know if this guy is your cousin or your uncle, but let's just call him one of my relatives, told his father, one day finally fed up, he didn't really enjoy the idea of reading or studying much. And so he told the dad, I could be sitting here. I could be even looking in this book, but in my head, I'm busy playing outside there. Okay. So that's my second vignette. That's the second story about a child. In this case, it was a real relative. And I don't know where that guy at that age amassed that amount of courage to speak to an African father in that way. And the fact that he did not get a whooping means even the dad was probably shocked at the audacity with which it was said. But again, you clearly see this is a kid with the ability to study, but he's present. And for whatever reason, his could be boredom, defiance, whichever. He is physically present. He has the mental wherewithal. At least if you can be able to conjure such a rebuttal against your dad, you have it mentally. So he has a mental wherewithal. He has a physical presence. He has the books. He has everything and every reason to study, but he wasn't studying. He was physically present, but every other bit was disconnected. Then vignette number 3 would be history. Definitely, history is always something I'm interested in. So the vignette number 3 is going to be drawn from two pieces of struggle history. One is the American civil rights movement, and the other one is a Kenya multi-party movement. What happened in those times was interesting. So for the American civil rights movement was the whole clash between Malcolm X thinking and Martin Luther thinking. So those who are not too familiar with this piece of history, Martin Luther advocated more for nonviolent resistance. He called it the doctrine of non-cooperation, but it was extremely nonviolent. It was marching the streets and everything. Malcolm X's motto summarizes just by one word: by any means necessary. For him, nothing was off the table, including leaving the Americas and coming back to Africa. And in between these two schools of thought was a third school of thought for just don't trouble the waters. They were minorities, most of them Blacks, who knew the problem, and some of them had the ability to do something, either with the ability to act or the sciences or whichever sphere. They could have advanced the cause for civil rights movement, but they were caught between. And I remember, I think fittingly captured was the words that said, what we will remember is not the hate of our enemies, but it is the silence of our friends. So again, for whichever reason, they were physically present, they could see the atrocities being done, they could see that something needed to be changed, and they were unable to either swing to the Malcolm X side of all things necessary or to the Dr. King side of nonviolent, non-cooperation, but they were just there, dead in the middle. They had the ability, they didn't do anything. A similar scenario unfolded in Kenya during especially the late 80s and the 90s, when Kenya was clamoring for a return to multi-party rule. There was a bunch of people who would later on be called or branded as sycophants, who in private would complain about the excesses of single-party rule, but in public were sycophants of single-party rule. And as an end result, whereas they had access to power, they had access to the leverages of power, they didn't do half as much to move the country in a positive direction. And this whole, bunch of guys were called sellouts or sycophants, and the country stayed longer in single-party rule than it needed to, and with its resultant challenges because of this kind of individuals. Now, time doesn't lend me enough time to speak about military cases where entire regiments have revolted against the leader without cocking a gun, without doing anything but stripping their backpacks, and just placing it on their leader and walking away in silence. The sheer weight of, like if the whole platoon places its bags on you, can be able to kill you. And that has happened in military circles by commanders who pushed their members to a certain level. They were not able to retaliate verbally or anything, but they stepped aside. In all of these cases, all these vignettes from the fable story about the mouse and the cat and the bell, all the way through to political history and present-day history and everyday reality, seems to be a steady pattern of individuals aware of a problem, very present there, possessing the levers and the ability to cause or create or do change, but for one reason or the other, ranging from fear to just inactivity or certain philosophies, were unable to show up when they were mostly needed. In each of these situations, the mice keep getting eaten. In the civil rights struggle, many Blacks kept on dying. In the Kenyan waiting for the second birth of the country, many people kept dying. So there was collateral. The silence was not just costless or cost-free. It cost something. So the question that we need to tackle today is, before this continues permeating our churches, our marriages, our relationships, our workspaces, and resulting in something or someone dying, what is it that is causing people to quietly quit, or worse still, to be quietly fired? And how can we stem it? And stemming it would result in us preserving, conserving, and more importantly, growing life. It's time. I hope we won't quit on each other today, but that we'll be able to have a genuine conversation around quiet quitting and quiet firing. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Saya. All the English of the nose in our family landed on other people, not me. But let's tackle the topic. So we'll start with the HR person. So that is Tom. So please define for us, because you're the firer and the hirer. Please define for us what quiet. I don't know which precedes the other, but I think they're like I said, two sides of the same coin. So Tom, please define for us what quiet firing is.
A quiet firing, I would say, is how a manager would react to quiet quitting, in the sense that quiet quitting is where an employee is actively disengaged in at the workplace, giving their bare minimum. They are not having any enthusiasm to do any extra assignments or even attend meetings, for example, that are not mandatory. Quiet firing, on the other end, is a response by the manager where they see that their team members are quiet quitting. They're aware of that. And then instead of tackling the underlying causes, they decided to reduce, for example, remove some of their workloads, assign other people the tasks that this team member used to do, and essentially just facilitate this quiet quitting to be an actual removal from the workplace. So they make it the workplace untenable for you to stay as a person who has quiet quit. They make it unbearable by those acts, removing assignments, not engaging you in conversations, not having you in meetings, not engaging in decision making. And at the end of it all, you probably just end up leaving the organization altogether.
So Andrew, with this premise, what Tom is saying, the one must be the chicken and the egg, one must follow the other. You can't just have a bad manager who just quiet quits, who quiet fires you. You have to, whoever is being employed must quiet quit to be quiet fired, or is it a quid pro quo? What's the situation? Can you just, okay, what is quiet quitting then? And must one precede the other
one? So I think all three scenarios can actually exist. I think you can have one where there's a reasonable manager, but the person for multiple reasons has decided they're quiet quitting. You can have one where it's both parties that are, as Thomas described, and you can have a situation where there's a manager that has made a decision in his or her own mind that this person is not worth the effort, and therefore I don't feel I have the power or the legal justification to fire them, but I can create a scenario where they're frustrated enough to leave. So I will quiet fire them. I'll do all the things that Thomas mentioned. I'll withdraw the opportunities for them to engage in different things, and thereby frustrate them into a situation where someone is saying, voice please. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Simon, ongeza volume. Yeah. So I think all three situations can exist, but my view is actually this quiet quitting, quiet firing is actually the end result. The problem started a long time before that. By the time you get to that point, There's an expression I heard a long time ago that says the opposite of love is not hatred, but indifference. You know, when people are frustrated with you enough that they will speak to you and speak out, then they're still engaged. When they get to the point where they're like, you know what, I'm done, you know, but I still like the paycheck, you know, then they've got to that point for some reasons. Now, all of those reasons, part of those reasons can be the individual, some choices they have made, decisions they have or haven't made. But I always say that primary responsibility should start with leadership, and it should start with the people who lead in the organization, because quiet quitting to me is a direct reflection of the type of leadership that has been experienced within the organization at both the highest levels, but also the middle levels and so on. And I'll give you just one very simple example. One of my past employers, we were going through a very difficult time with the company. And I was doing at the time 15-hour days. You know, I'd get into the office at 6 in the morning. I'd be driving out 8:39. I remember a conversation with my wife where I fell asleep in the middle of the conversation just because of how exhausted I was. But every day when I was leaving the office at 8:39, the CEO was either just in front of me or I would leave him in the office. You know, I used to have conversations with him about the big projects that we were working on that needed his input, and we'd be talking on the road at 6 in the morning. And he was either just ahead of me or just behind me. Both of us were heading to the office, you know? And so no matter how bad it got, I always felt the guy who is on top, with whom the buck stops, is in the trenches with us, you know? Where we all have our levels, we're all doing the different things that we need to do, but he's there with us. Leaving the company while he was the CEO never crossed my mind. And it was a really bad situation. Fast forward to several months later, the company was doing much better, but we had a different CEO, you know? And this guy, you know, there are times you're planning on staying in the office until 8 to finish this thing because it is important. The guy's driving out at 5:30, you know, and it's not like he's going to be in the office very early or is going to continue work at home, you know. So the way the leadership behaves, the environment that they foster, whether they can encourage people to believe and trust in them. Trust, I think, is a big thing there, has a big say into how it is that people respond. Because the whole quiet quitting thing, it's passive aggression. Someone is in a situation where they feel powerless. They feel, I have problems. There are problems in the organization. I'm struggling with certain things in the organization, but I cannot speak about it because worst case scenario, I lose my job. Best case scenario, I'm ignored, you know? So what do people do? They stop. They stop engaging. They become indifferent, you know? And I think you can see, because, you know, the middle managers that we talk about are also employees. They might have people reporting into them, but they too are employees and they respond to the people above them, you know? So sometimes personal characteristics bleed through and people are still positive in such environments. But very often I would say both quiet quitting and quiet firing are a reflection of the leadership and the culture that is generated in the company as a result.
So Syria, is it a new thing, or Gen Z just came up, rebranded something we already did in the 70s, 80s, 60s? Is it a new thing? And is it a westernized thing, or is this happening back home?
It is not a new thing. It is just the trending word is called quiet quitting. But this has been happening for a long, long time. And I like what Andrew has said about it being all about leadership, because I think neither one precedes the other. Because if you are in an environment that is toxic, the toxicity may be brought about by several things: culture, leadership, whatever the case, depending on the organization that you're in. It then pushes you to quiet quit because you're tired, you've had enough, you're not moving up the ladder, you're not growing, your performance is not recognized. So here you are, you work, you know, tirelessly for hours and you put in everything that you can, but there's no reward. Best case scenario, you get an average rating at the end of whatever period, and you have given it your absolute best. And when you look at the numbers, you've actually really performed well. But there's the thing they call the performance curve that then pushes you into a position that will not give you any benefit, no reward, no, what do they call it, bonuses. And therefore, over time, what will happen is you will get frustrated and you will just be a body. You will start probably doing other things, your side hustle, whatever it is, but you like the pay slip, you like the benefits, probably medical, whatever other benefits you receive. So it's bare minimum. You're maintaining performance to a point where you will not get fired. Not there. So your focus, everything else that you're doing is happening outside the office, but you go to the office just to be seen to be there and just to give the bare minimum that allows you to remain within that workspace. As for the managers, I think that sometimes they don't even know that they're quiet firing. So you have gotten into management because you are a good performer. Doesn't mean you have people skills, doesn't mean you know how to manage, doesn't mean you were trained to manage people. And therefore, the way that you manage and lead your teams becomes what you saw, which was not necessarily a good thing. You might have had the worst manager ever. You spoke badly about them to your colleagues. You know, it was always, this guy's like this and like this and like this. So you got promoted and got out of the space of frustration, and you then become this manager that you observed, not the manager that you should be or the leader that you should be. And therefore, replicating is a toxic environment. You're replicating bad management behavior, poor leadership, which leads your team to be frustrated. You're not bothered about really who your team is or who the person you are leading is. And this then causes the person to get disengaged. And once I'm disengaged, that is it. I can either be actively disengaged and pull people down with me, which means the performance of the entire team will go down, or I'm just disengaged. I'm just not there. My mind is not there. My time is spent elsewhere. If I have a side hustle, I'm always on the phone trying to figure out what's happening in the business. And so I think that neither one precedes the other, but then they coexist. So one will happen when the other thing has happened. Or, as Tom said in the beginning, if I quiet quit and my manager realizes, then they will begin to quiet fire me. So it depends on the situation, but this is not new. It has been happening for a long time. And even here, for example, most of the clients that we deal with are people who are looking for jobs, but they're not leaving their current job. So I will not leave until I find another job, but I am continuously and constantly looking for another organization to move to, another opportunity, or deciding that I'm going to leave and going to jump into this side hustle. But I like the pay slip. And so therefore I am here because I will receive money at the end of the month and I have responsibilities. I have those loans. Ask the people in the banking industry, they will tell you they are afraid to leave because then my loans go into the regular Mwananchi rate. And this is very expensive for me. I will not afford it. And so I'm afraid to even begin to think of moving. But is my mind there? No, I am completely elsewhere, right? So it is definitely not a new thing, Posa.
So that brings up to the question of golden handcuffs, and I honestly feel it with especially my Kenyan banker friends. They're like, I can't quit because I'm getting a mortgage at this rate. So how do we avoid that situation? How I don't know. Because you said it's leadership that as the backstops with the leadership, as Andrew said. But how do you balance between the backstopping with you and the golden handcuffs, and just the issue of of nepotism and all those isms that makes you have very, it's not sad, but very horrible leaders who are inept at their work, but you still have to work with them. You might enjoy your work, but you're not enjoying your manager because they are very inept. How do you balance all the three? And any of you can take a stab at this. Andrew, you're raring to go. I have seen you. Go ahead.
Always am. As you know, I can talk for ages. I would actually argue or propose that a lot of it still comes down to leadership, because I think as a leader, one of your responsibilities is to engage with your team to understand where your team is. And I think when you build that trust relationship with them, you can actually have real conversations with them. And I'll give you two examples. One was a former manager that I had the first time that I was living in Dubai, and what I was doing in the company was, let's call it a leadership development program kind of thing, which I'd done at that point for almost 2 years. And he called me into his office and he said, look, with what it is that I see about you and your nature and how you work, this job is not well suited for you. You have all the technical competencies that are required, but your mindset is not the one that's kind of required in this job. And I agreed with him because I was facing similar frustrations, So the conversation that we had at that point, he said, look, I'm not asking you to leave and I'm not firing you. What I'm saying is, look for other opportunities. Any support that you need from me, I will be there to support you in getting that opportunity that better suits you, But it was a real conversation that we had, and it allowed me, I think I stayed on with the company for another, from that point, maybe another 9 months, 10 months. And in that time, I found a job that was better suited to my nature, and I took that job and I moved, But to the question about fear, the moving had to come with the acknowledgement that my circumstances, financial or otherwise, would change. Because at the point, I was a single man living and working in Dubai. I mean, at the time on my budget, I was saving 51% of my income, and leaving meant going back home where first off, KRA has to take their cut, and it's a different environment. And I had to acknowledge the fact that moving would mean a change, and change scares people in many, many ways. Change scares people. So I think it comes back down to leaders and the conversations that you had, because the best leaders that I've had in my past were people that I spoke about my frustrations, and then I had the opportunity to make the decision before it started to impact my work because of the relationship I had with them, relationships that they helped to build. In the jobs that I've had in the past where I didn't have a good relationship with the leader, they found out about my frustration when I was handing in my notice, at which point I've got another opportunity and moved on. So first, leaders, I think, have responsibility to bear. And I do not equate responsibility and blame. Sometimes you're not to blame as the leader, but you are responsible. And that's why you, quote unquote, get paid the big bucks. But in terms of fear, I think it's a question that everyone should ask themselves, because I know leaders sometimes don't have the conversations because they fear having uncomfortable conversations. They fear communicating to someone that, hey, now how is the team going to react if they feel that I want to get rid of them? But also the people themselves need to understand that it is change the view in terms of scope of time. It might be good to keep on getting that salary for the next few months, but what's the long-term impact on you as an individual? How does it affect your life? How does it affect your relationships beyond work for you to be in such a situation where you're demotivated in the place that you go to and spend most of your time every day? What's the impact that it's having on the relationship with your spouse, if you have a spouse, and if not a spouse, a significant other? What's the impact on the relationship with your kids? Because these things have consequences to you as an individual. You're not going to be in a demotivated environment and be happy. You're not going to be the guy who is frustrated at work and just gets in at 8 and 5:01 on the dot, you're in the car and on your way home. it takes its toll on you, and that toll manifests in the rest of the time. So the question that I urge people who are in this situation is, what kind of life do you want to live? How do you want to engage with what you do? How do you want to engage with where you spend most of your time? Because everyone is led and everyone can be a leader, you know? So the answer to the question that you get about how you respond when you're in that environment has an impact to how you will respond when you're the manager that's in that environment. Because sometimes a real conversation that you need to have is to say, guys, let's be clear that this isn't working. It's not working for you. It's not working. So can we find a middle ground? You know, and that middle ground, I mean, I know Syria might not like me saying this, but companies don't like recruitment. Recruitment is expensive. You know, you don't want to recruit, and you especially don't want to recruit when it's going to leave a hole. But if you can have an engagement with someone where you know this person is with me for the next year, you know, I can take the time, do all everything that I need to do, even if it's training someone internally to take over the role. That, I mean, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think many HR professionals would prefer that situation as opposed to you get a notice and now you're scrambling to fill in the hole, you know, when maybe what you needed was a real conversation, you know, because not everyone is suited for every job. And sometimes real conversations have to be had so that people can make the right decisions for them and for the company.
And
I
Tom,
would like to,
Tom, on top of what you're gonna say, would you take a stab at the question, what if the HR is the one who's quite quitting, sent by Rosemary Millicent here?
Okay, I will get back to that. There's a statement I read last week that a bad work environment will change you more than you can change it. So it's very important for us to also understand what battles can we fight at the workplace. We need to draw the line. I know joblessness can be uncomfortable, but we have to understand what is the impact of this environment on your well-being, like Andrew says. When you go into a role, what is your intention? What is your career trajectory? What do you want to come out of this? Do you want to come in as a clerk and be a clerk for the next 15 years? So it is very important for us also who are going into jobs to understand, to start mapping ways in which you want to grow in that sector or in that profession. And that helps us in building the morale to stay. It mitigates the chances of this quiet quitting, so to speak, because you're always having something that is exciting to look up to. The other bit also is to also speak about your ambitions with your supervisors. During those performance evaluations, when you come in as well, have those conversations with your supervisor and let them know where do you want to head to in the next 1, 3, 5 or so years. And then they help you map your way within that organization. And also be proactive in looking out for those roles that are going to challenge you. Besides that conversation with the supervisor, because your supervisor could be leading a team of 6 members and they have their own job to do. They're not going to be the ones coming to you and telling you, oh, by the way, Posa, could you apply for this role in such and such a place and such a location? Some of these initiatives have to be from inside you. So it's important to understand the impact. You also need to know what is the line within which it's no longer tenable for you to continue the employment. Leave alone the benefits of the 3% or look at the damage it can do to you. A bad environment can mess you up in a way that you cannot really recover from for a long time. That said, on the supervisor's front, what conversations are you having with your team members? Are you having check-ins? It's important for supervisors to have set check-ins. There are these impromptu ones that you can run on a regular basis, on an ad hoc basis. But there are also moments that you have to have calendared and agendaed kind of conversation with the team members. Understand what is it that is bothering them. What do they expect from you? What are their achievements for that week? What do they want to, what do they want to bring to your attention? What are their pain points? Where do they want you to plug in? Because sometimes someone is struggling with another person within the team and they don't know how to plug you into that conversation in an email. How do you plug yourself in, or how do you find a way to navigate behind the scenes and help your team member have an easier time with a particular manager within your organization? So those are some of the things that we can do as managers to make sure that the environment is not one that is pushing our team members out. And then also recognition. How do you want to be recognized? There are people whose recognition styles, what appeals to them is different. So don't assume that putting my name, putting my picture on a television screen or on the front office desk is what excites me. That might not be what I see as recognition. For me, I want money. That's what I want. I want a one-time bonus. That is what recognition is. You can keep quiet about it, but just give me the check. So do you find out how recognition, what kind of recognition appeals to your staff members? So those are some of the things that managers need to look at as they work towards making the environment better, so that we don't have this golden kind of golden handcuff, so to speak, and end up with team members who are stuck simply because of circumstances rather than commitment to actually bring in success to the team. Now, the question of HR. Let me just HR making it. What was the question?
The one quiet quitting, who's just realized they are quiet quitting. Yes. What advice would you give them?
I wouldn't say that HRs would quiet quit you. It's easy for your supervisor to do the quiet quitting by removing the workloads and enrolling other people to do your tasks, spreading it away so that you actually have bare minimum. That bare minimum that you're looking for, you have it, and then you run with it until a point where you actually step out. On the other side, HR as an agent of your employer can create what we call constructive dismissal, an environment that is not tenable for you to continue staying. That unfortunately, we can do that very well. I don't want to deny that. We can do that very well, but I don't want to deny that actually. But the thing is, why are they creating that environment? It is, from where I sit, it's unprofessional for us to proceed with this constructive dismissal instead of addressing the underlying issues. Andrew outlined a lot of issues at the back end that trigger this quiet quitting, trigger the quiet firing, and quiet quitting can even be in your manager, and it is actually infectious. You know, you can actually tell when your manager is quiet quitting. They have less engagements. You tell them issues, they're like pushing them under the table. They are barely attending meetings. They are not offering solutions. They are not doing their level of effort that is required. But understanding why managers bring certain issues to you as a HR, going beyond what they're just saying, is important, because otherwise you end up with a biased kind of view. It's nice to understand when you're saying that this person is not able to hit target 1, 2, 3, what efforts have you done to make them reach those levels? Those are the conversations HRs need to have, not where you just brought in papers and told, sign this off, let this guy go. No, ask questions. And as a HR person, I'm quite a pain. I'm not that kind of HR you can easily give those kind of things and tell them just fire someone. Or, it doesn't work for me. So you really need to ask questions and tell them to explain why these measures have to be taken. Demonstrate what efforts they have done to make this employee reach certain levels of performance. And there are moments where it's actually the supervisor that you get rid of. I worked with a boss who was very particular about that. And it was one of my best HR experiences. If a team member left, she would reach out and ask you, Arodi, I saw the exit for Syria. Why do you think she left? And I would say, it's just as captured there. And she would say, no, let's look for the supervisor. And she would say that we don't lose any other person under that supervisor. That was a commitment that she would want you to give. So if you lose one staff member, you go next. That was the principle. And I liked it because it was putting managers on toes. You needed to understand that you're responsible for the performance of your team members. You needed to know that you are one of the triggers of the reasons why your team members would leave the organization, because her argument used to be that if you tell her that, you know, Saya is leaving because she got another job with Amref, then she would argue by saying, how did Saya know that Amref has a job? Because something was pushing her from us, from us. So that thing that is pushing him from us is likely the supervisor. Can you find a way in which you either build the capacity of the supervisor to become a better leader of their team, or find a way to help them get out and go back to the society? And like I mentioned in the beginning, HRs, we are good at returning people to the society, not maliciously in most cases, procedurally.
But,
Yes.
my question, okay, before I lose this train of thought, is this a social problem that we've taken to the workplace? Because we in marriages know about the silent treatment. Like if things are not going well, your spouse has irritated you, your children have irritated you constantly, and you're tired of correcting or being corrected, and you just decide to quit. As in you're like, you know what? I'll be silent. You'll just be here. I'll cook, clean, but there'll be no enthusiasm in this marriage. Have we taken our poor coping skill mechanisms from the social front into the work front? Whoever was going next to take that, yeah.
I think.
Let me just wrap it up,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
All right.
I don't think I wouldn't say that it's a bad socialization. In many instances, a team member who quiet quits will have kind of tried to reach out, either directly or indirectly, for a cry for help, so to speak. Because what is triggering this quiet quitting? You are not recognizing me. We are peers. You're treating my colleague, my counterpart differently as my supervisor. I realize that we are earning different salaries. And that happens a number of times, particularly in our NGO space, where you come in, you're from a government, you're paying 60,000 in the government, then we come and pay you 300,000, you get very excited, and then you realize that your peer is earning 800,000. That is 3 months later. So how then are you supposed to give the same output as that other peer of yours who is earning 3 times your salary? So these kind of issues will have been flagged by your team member, either expressly or through other team members. And that is why a manager also needs to be one who listens. You cannot just be a great manager who does not listen. Listening also means listening to the unsaid. As a HRs, we are trained to listen to the unsaid. If you go to a HR's office, a HR will actually tell you that's not what you brought you here. There's something more that you want to share with me, and they will help you open up. That's the same way a manager needs to be. Are you able to actually look at your team member when they walk in the office and realize, oh my goodness, I think Irene here seems to have some challenges? Then listen to them, and then they'll tell you, oh, by the way, I'm having this situation that I'm facing. There are even workload issues, because you have identified that one member of your team does great at a certain aspect of your workflow. Then you decide to pump all those aspects to them, thinking that you're motivating them, and letting the other people who don't understand that bit actually just disappear with their lack of knowledge. That instead of asking Andrew to train the rest of the team, you're pumping all that Andrew knows to him expressly. At the end of the day, you just sink this person. While you think that you're recognizing them for that special skill set, they're actually feeling that they're carrying more load than they need to do. And are you listening? Are you seeing that as a good measure? So those are some of the things that we need to be out there listening to what our team members say, either physically or through other ways. Then we shall be able to deal with some of these things, because we don't recruit kids. We don't recruit kids. We recruit fairly older people. And one thing that I've learned in the course of life as a HR person, as a manager, is that even that driver you see there can actually give you feedback on the feelings of one of your team members, not directly. So you have to listen. Don't be that person who walks into an office, sits, locks the door. Don't be that person who sits at the back left and don't even say anything apart from just saying hi. Ask this guy who is driving you, how is your day? How is everything happening? They will give you some additional information that will help you make the environment better so that you avoid these kind of scenarios.
Okay, Siri, I think you are onto something.
Yes, I was going to say a number of things, but before I lose your train of thought of whether we bring our behaviors from the social aspect into the office is also a community. We are human. It's all very psychological. You know, the behavior that you have at home towards something happening or not happening, it doesn't mean when you go to the office, you are a robot, you are human. And so if certain things are happening in the workplace, you will react to them in a human way. So I stopped separating, you know, the way we used to say work-life balance, it is work-life integration. You do not have a separate life, a separate persona, a separate, you don't bring a separate thing to the workplace. It is you, and you spend majority of your time in the workplace if you're employed. And so it's not that we are transferring behavior, you are the same person. So the likelihood of you quitting in your house when people are not doing what they need to do, or you're not getting the support that you need, is caused by something. And so in the office, when you are quitting or you're becoming disengaged, it is caused by something. And so it's a human reaction, right? And various things again come to mind. I love what Tom is saying about listening. So I do strengths coaching, and it's all about getting people to understand themselves, what they're good at, and what they can bring in terms of contribution to the workplace or to whichever environment you're in. And something that I have learned is that when you have a bad manager, or in our view in HR as a poor manager, you need to sit and understand the kind of person that they are. Are they fit for that job? As I said earlier, you sometimes get promoted because you are a good performer, not because you are a good manager. Or you're being promoted because you were expensive at a certain level. And so now when we move you into supervisory role and you're in entry-level management, you are no longer as expensive, right? Because you were probably in the union before. And so with every year, you become more and more expensive. So when we promote you into entry-level management, you're no longer unionizable. And so therefore, you will no longer earn every year as much as you are required to get an increment. So not everybody in management and leadership should be there, number one. In terms of listening, this is so crucial. You need to listen with your everything. It reminds me of a very senior director in a company, and he was a CFO, but his personality does not allow for him to connect with people in terms of coming in the morning, saying, good morning, how are you, how are your kids, knowing how your family is or how you're even feeling if you're unwell. And the majority of whistleblowers came from that team. Why? Because they felt that their manager does not connect with them. It's all about numbers. It's all about performance. It's all about, you know, have you completed what you need to complete? This manager does not care. He does not even say good morning when he comes in. Now, it is not that he was a bad person, but his personality was such that he comes in the morning with a certain mindset. I need to get to my desk and do 1, 2, 3 things until 5 p.m. So my focus is not on people. Whereas if the majority of his team were people who are relational and they love to connect, they will do the work. But if you don't connect with who they are, if you don't care about how they feel or how they are, or if they're unwell, you know, simple things like good morning, trust you me, the environment within that team will be really, really messed up. And so by us sitting from a HR perspective, sitting with the management, look, you have these type of people in your team, and you therefore need to connect with who they are for you to get the best out of them. You need to know them, you need to listen to them, you need to observe them and know person X requires a good morning, whereas person B is just like me and will get to the office and get things going, right? So connecting with this person will mean you're engaging with them, will show care. And the moment you that the person then feels, I am appreciated, right? My manager sees me, all right? So it's all about listening. It is about observing. It is about knowing who your people are in order to be the manager that they need. Because then if my manager doesn't know me or what I require, in order to perform at my best, I will not perform at my best. The environment will seem toxic to me because my manager is not giving me what I need. Second thing I wanted to mention is that people are also, and their employees. So if I go back to maybe the question that was asked, was that what if the HR is quiet quitting? HR, people in HR, human resource professionals are also employees. And so if the environment within that HR space, and I have seen and been in one where even you sitting in HR, you have to take care of other people, but
realize
being taken care of
hata
is
nani,
your manager,
our
is your
director
manager taking care of you, your HR manager, your HR director, your senior HR business partner, your head of learning, are they taking care of the people under them? So HR employees can also quiet quit. Then you had mentioned something about the golden handcuffs. And coming from a banking background, let me tell you what happens the moment someone is brave enough to say, you know what, I will do this, and they leave. So the people in banking who you see moving around, you know, to either different banks or different organizations, they took the bold step to leave at the first instance. They were not afraid of this loans or really holding on to the benefits of being in banking. The moment you leave, you become very marketable. Because then if I'm brave enough to take the first step to leave and find another job, I will never fear looking for another job again. Now, those who then get stuck in the same organization for years on end, you hear somebody has been there for 25 years, it's riddled, they're riddled with fear of how will I survive out there, right? Or how can I get into another job, or how will I survive becoming an entrepreneur? I mean, it took bravery even for me to leave after being in an organization for 15 years. But I said, you know what, it's done. I am done. Let me take the choice of leaving and going to do my own things, because then you are moving towards doing the thing that you enjoy the most. You're moving towards doing work that is aligned to your strengths, meaning you will never be tired and you will never be disengaged. A utopian scenario is whereby everybody is doing what they love to do and what they're good at doing. Because once you have that, there's no reason for me to be disengaged. I will be naturally motivated to come to work and do this thing because I love to do it. But that's not the case. We have thousands, in fact, millions of people who are not doing jobs that they love to do, or that they're wired to do, or that they really want to do. And therefore, I think that is also a big, big reason why we have quiet quitting. Back to you, Posa.
Just if I
So,
may.
because I always lose my train of thought and I have to sprinkles on all questions. So, Andrew, if you could touch on emotional intelligence on top of all these things that we've said. You gotta cry.
No, it's actually good, because that ties in kind of to what I was saying, because my experience is that unfortunately leadership is not taught as a skill in multiple organizations across the world. This is not a Kenyan problem, an American problem. It's that, like, there's an expectation that when you become more technically competent, you will move to supervisory. Then from more technically competent, you will move to management, senior management, and so on. But across all those levels, you need to have and demonstrate different leadership skills. You know, now some aspects of leadership come naturally to certain people because of their personality types, but other aspects do not, you know? So like, I have been fortunate enough to be taken for and to take myself for a lot of leadership development courses over my career. And what I see it as a leadership journey. It's not something that ever ends. You will start at the earliest levels in your career and you will continue. You know, in one of the programs that I did, which is I think the best one that I've done, one of the guys who was on there was at a point in his life where he's a grandfather. He is now no longer in formal employment. He's serving as the chairman of a board in multiple organizations. You know, he's in the sunset years of his career, as it were, but he still has something to offer, still has something to learn. So organizations need to treat leadership and leadership development as a skill, as a set of skills that will, it's not, you're not going to get, like myself and Syria, we've known each other for years, but our personality types are not the same. So we would not engage with the same problem, quote unquote, in an organization in the same way, even if it is exactly the same people responding to us. So the leadership development that Syria needs is not the leadership development that I need, because I'm a different person with a different personality and different developmental needs in my leadership, you know? So some people are naturally emotionally intelligent, you know? Like when I look at my family, that's my brother, you know? He's the guy in the family. He just, I call, he's the glue. He holds the family together in many ways. And I'm sure you know other guys like that in the family. For me, my nature is solitary. You know, I have to be reminded that, hey, you haven't called these people in a few weeks. And I'm like, oh yeah. And it's not that I don't care. It's the way my personality manifests itself is different. So I've had to become aware of that through development. So emotional intelligence is very important. Different people have different emotional intelligence levels, different emotional intelligence understanding, and it's through deliberate development over years. It's not you go do this one course and you've got it, you know? It's something that will change, because the way you would react as a manager who was a 29-year-old single, you know, versus the way you react as a 40-something-year-old who has now a spouse and several children is different, because circumstances in your existence have changed. So you need to evolve. And organizations need to be more deliberate about treating leadership as a skill. Management is a set of skills. There's certain things that you need to do to be a good manager. There's a Venn diagram between management and leadership, and it's not entirely overlapped, you know? So you have some people who are very good managers, but are not good leaders. And some leaders who are very good leaders, but not necessarily good managers, because there's a big aspect of management that's very administrative, you know? So you need to have the deliberate, organizations need to have the deliberate intent to develop people. Because culture, you know, I think there's some studies that say that the culture of a company takes 10 to 12 years to change, but the environment is something that can change more rapidly, you know? So even as you go through the journey of trying to adjust your organization, the leaders are and leaders don't have to be managers, by the way. The leaders are the ones who will effect that change. You know, sometimes that guy in the union who is the most vocal, that's a leader, you know? And there needs to be a way that that leader engages with their people, because a great leader will make a company great. A terrible leader can sink it into the ground, you know? So leadership has to be something that's deliberate, so that the people are given the tools that are adequate for what it is that best suits their character and the situations that they face, you know? And one last note on that, you know, it's when people have brought up problems. There's a counselor, a marriage counselor that I once had a conversation with, and he mentioned a very interesting statistic about men and women, husbands and wives, or couples, not necessarily husbands and wives, but he says 80 to 90% of the problems between men and women are never resolved, but they do need to be addressed. Yeah. So if each person feels like what I needed to say has been heard, genuinely heard, and genuinely taken on board, even if it hasn't changed, it changes how it is that you engage. You know, so when people come forward and they bring a problem, and there's a perception of a genuine attempt to resolve the problem, even if resolution is never reached, that's a very different environment from the person who thinks, listen, I said this is the problem and you've done nothing about it. You know, you've not tried, you have not moved, there's been no movement, no attempt to move the needle in any way. You know, so So leadership has to be deliberate and problems have to be addressed, even if they can't be resolved.
My other question is, as HRs, are we setting, look at me owning up the HR spot. This is for you, Nzula. As HRs, are we setting ourselves to fail when through the JDs, you know, the Gen Zs and the generation that's gonna come after them are not gonna do the, I think we are all East Africans, Milivu Hulambivu beat, they will not go over and above what is expected of over their JD. So if they're employed at the same time as me, who's old enough, who thinks you should always go over and above, and they just stick to their JD, and the manager ends up quiet firing them, is it really their fault? Tom, as our HR on board, or Andrew, do you want to finish the train of thought? Then we can
just one quick thing, and I think Tom has a lot more to say on this than I will. So one of the things that we seem to forget as people is that the things that we hold, things like university degrees and stuff like that, are a construct. We have created those, you know. A university degree does not equate skills, you know, because things like universities did not exist at a point in time, yet society functioned. You know, the way people were taught, the way information was passed on, the way skills were developed and passed on was not necessarily in a formalized thing. So the formal things are definitely important, but they can't be the be all and end all, because someone can have skills without necessarily having the formal documentation to confirm that, and vice versa. You know, someone can have the documentation but not have the skills. Just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Now, one of the things that we have to appreciate about job descriptions, let me start the other way. Jobs. A job has a life of its own. All of us who have been employed at certain stages in our lives, including right now, if you look at what you're doing at the point when you're hired, let's say 2 years ago, and you've not been promoted, you realize that your job has taken a life of its own. There's some tasks that are falling off the job description. There are tasks that are coming into the job description, and then they become a regular part of your work. One of the ways in which we address quiet quitting, particularly in the sense where people feel like I'm doing more than I was hired to do, it's not on my job description, is through regular reviews of these job descriptions. It is important that managers as well as the team members actually go through their job descriptions regularly. I've worked in an organization where at the point of every evaluation, you'd be asked to rewrite your job description in the sense of making additions or subtractions based on actually what you're doing. So if we let the job description be as it is from the point when we joined in 2012 up to now, then you're not doing justice to this employee. And therefore you end up branding them as quiet quitting because they are not doing something that you think is extra, which has become part of their normal work. So a review of the job descriptions regularly is important so that that life that the job is taking in progressively is captured in that document. And actually the team member is the one who is asked to give feedback on their job description, not you as the manager. Ask them, this is what is written, but what do you actually do? Many times you'll find that a 3-page job description can actually be compressed to 1-pager when you ask people, okay, this is what we hired you to do, but what do you actually do? On a regular basis, on a daily basis, on a bi-monthly basis, on a monthly basis, you realize that that job description that you have as 3 pages can actually fit into 1-pager. So a regular review is very important in terms of making sure that people don't feel like they're doing a lot more than they're hired for, or you as the manager don't think that your team member is not doing what they were hired for. Because you're going to deal with people at the workplace who actually say that this is not in my job description. This is not what I was hired for. How do you mitigate that? By having those conversations and looking through the document and giving it another life without necessarily changing the role or the remuneration structure that it fits into. And just before I wrap it up, this Andrew was bringing in a very good aspect of development, leadership development. It's not always that anyone who has risen over the ranks is a great manager or a supervisor. Many times HRs will tell you that people who come to us when we are when in our offices will be admitting how much they are going to struggle to say certain things or do, including even this performance evaluation, that people, when the timelines come, their managers will just panic because they can't even give feedback to their team members. It is important for organizations to also invest in supervisory and leadership training, because these things are not given. You don't just wake up in the morning and become a great leader, like Andrew was saying. And some of these initiatives can actually be in-house. You don't necessarily even have to have an external party doing that. I'm currently working in a place where we have our own leadership development programs, and they keep changing over time. And I've seen that elsewhere in other spaces where when we had a promotion of a staff member, before the promotion, we would be asked as HRs to confirm if POSA had supervised people in their career before. And I will have a quick check with you just to verify again. And then if they didn't have that experience, they would be lined up for the next leadership and supervisory training. There used to be a quick 1 week, 7-day training. So you line them up quickly so that you have them the basic equipment of succeeding in their work, so that you don't set them up for failure. Because if they fail to be great supervisors, the entire team fails. So don't set up people for failure, because you're recruiting them, you're promoting to them into roles where supervisory is a big element, and then they don't have that skill set. So it's also important for organizations and managers to learn about ways in which they can empower people that they promote within the organization to be better supervisors and leaders.
Thank you. Tony, welcome. And I feel like throwing you in the deep end. As I ask Saya a question, are you able to just read through what Nora has said and try to answer? And Saya, my question is, because you need to put your face here, on organizational silence, and just touch a bit on organizational silence. And I know, as Syria has said, we are social beings everywhere, and I know we need to touch a bit on the religious circle side, because we've taken this quiet quitting and quiet firing in our houses of worship. Could you touch? I know you're inside my head, so you understand this question. So could you touch a bit on organizational silence and quiet quitting, quiet firing in the religious hemisphere, as Tony thinks about that question?
The word coming to my head is not Swahili, it's mashakura, but I understand you. Mashakura, for those who don't understand, is in America, I think it's haystack, just a mix of everything. So if I was to simplify it, I think organizational silence can actually be termed as quiet quitting at an organizational level. But just more specifically, it's when the organizational culture has become such that the team, the members of the organization, the employees in this case, are not bringing 100%. They're not bringing in 100% of themselves into the workspace, whereas they have the capacity, they have the ability, and the same factors that impact a quiet quitting and quiet firing, when they become systemic, and then they become the pervading organizational culture, they lead to a case of organizational silence. A bit more specifically is when members are not of an organization are either mostly unwilling, also unable to act up or speak up, or act up or speak up to change the course, the wrong course or courses that are going on in an organization. The easiest or clearest places to see this is normally in civil service, where individuals who are brilliant and very capable just sit by and see waste and incompetence doing its thing. It's different from the absconding. I have a Nigerian friend who once were having a discussion about the civil servants absconding, and so I talked about, you know, the way in Kenyan offices you find somebody has put the coat, you assume they're nearby, but the guy could be 20 kilometers away. And he looked at me and told me, like, that feels like child play. Told me in Nigeria, they even have extra spectacles. So you come, you find a table with an extra phone, spectacles, a coat, a cup of tea. Your socialized guy is next door. One guy could be in another state altogether. So that's like a extreme form. That's the absconding. But it could be really, you know, individuals showing up to work every single day. They realize, like the cases Syria, Mudachi, and Arodi have been pointing to, that need to be escalated, or things that are just not going well. But for some reason, people are not talking about it. It's being allowed to fester, and it is affecting the output and the impact and eventually the culture of the organization. That put together, when members of a team or of an organization are either unwilling or unable to speak up or act up to change the or alter the direction of an organization, when they can clearly see it is in the wrong direction and they have the capability, that's often a manifestation of organizational silence. Religious circles. The reason people end up calling me pastor. So I actually think organization silence shows itself brilliantly in churches. In the run-up to this conversation, I engaged people on my wall about church and quiet quitting, and it was very insightful, like totally shout out and celebrate to individuals. And there were various scenarios where, Syria is here, she's a HR professional, but she goes to church X. This is purely an anecdotal example. She goes to church X and she can clearly see that the problem in the church is people are misplaced. The people are not aligned with their gifting, their skills, their abilities. So they're just placed all over the place. But for some reason, Syria, who in her 8 to 5 Monday through to Friday job, would be able to solve that thing in a dream. You know, like she could wake up middle of the night and put up an org structure that works, will somehow just sit through that stuff in church for years on end and keep seeing church election cycles going and people being misplaced and people being put suboptimally. And Syria is just okay sitting through it, wiping a pew or occasionally singing or playing the piano. She is not bringing her ability to bear on the direction the church would and should be able to go. And so problems that could be solved end up, festering. Assuming Mudachi is a financial guru who, he's pulling together in his 8 to 5 Monday through to Friday, he's pulling together deals that put millions and get development projects, on track and on budget. And, being the same Mudachi will sit in a congregation and see the theologians yell themselves hoarse, trying to do a mixture of pleading, cajoling, and guilt-tripping individuals to give money. And from the moment the guy opens a mouth, Mudachi can be able, and Mudachi looks at the screen, Mudachi is able to tell this thing will not fly. But somehow, Mudachi does not bring his, it's somehow he checks out his financial ability at the door on his way into the church, sits through this for 15 years, seeing the church being built brick by brick or whichever project, or it stagnates. Or Arodi is customer service, brilliant customer service expert who, he's been able to build brands from ground up and, that are known in the market for their excellence in customer service. He shows up in church and there's lackluster ushering, there is mediocre deacons, things are not the user experience. If you're to make church or the religious organization a brand, the user experience is less than whelming, okay? But already he'll check out his professional, his customer service experience somewhere on the door, sit through this mediocrity for 20 years, 25 years, and The most he'll do is complain at the car park or hear people whispering and stuff. Or Tony is a brilliant videographer, you know, social media is his thing. He breathes, dreams, talks about this kind of stuff. Tony as an individual has 250K subscribers. His own church has 250 subscribers. And the moment Tony sits in church, he can see everything wrong about the way the whole thing is arranged. He knows it'll not appeal to the online audience. He knows it's too long, it's too insider focused. He can be able to, as in the folder opens in his head, but somehow Tony is not bringing to bear his, social media skills to the faith circle. So I've used randomly and I tried to mix. Those are some of the manifestations of organization silence within faith circles. Some of the reasons for that, one is poor theology. Poor theology, specifically poor theology about work. There's been, for a very long time, what faith circles, and I speak from the Christian point of view because it's the one I'm most conversant with, people have made, and especially Christians have made a false divide between secular and spiritual. So some things are called secular, basically what you do during the weekday, and some things are called spiritual. And what is called spiritual is generally what you do when you come to the house of worship. So it tends to favor things like singing and preaching and those churchy activities. And so the end result is people then begin not having a proper theological basis to understand how they can integrate their profession into their faith, or at the very least, they feel their profession and their faith are totally, completely separate boxes. And then the two are not brought to bear on each other. In other words, their faith is not made to bear on their profession, and their profession is not made to bear on their profession. That's clue number one. Then reason number two for this manifestation within faith circles has to do with gatekeeping. And here I'm calling out especially preachers and church leaders. There's a lot of gatekeeping. So right now I'm not based in Africa, but I have preached from when I was 16 across various places in Africa. So experience a lot of that. So there's either because of breathe in, breathe out, because of insecurity. Now, a lot in the past, it's changing right now, but a lot of the times in the past, the individuals who ended up taking theology were not your grade A students. That's a polite way of putting it. And in many cases, the individuals would go to, I'm not saying all, but in many cases, the guys would be ushered into theology would be individuals who the family is like, you've tried every other thing, it ain't working. Don't you want to think about this direction? And for quite a significant number who then go through this, and you take the guy who whose academics was not the strongest point, take them through. Theology is a very rigorous thing, actually. You take them through that, and then you pull them to head an organization. A church is an organization. You put them to head an organization that has doctors, surgeons, lawyers, and everything. There is a conscious or unconscious amount of insecurity that somebody like this is stepping forward with. And when they are not made sufficiently aware about this, or they are not given the tools to manage the imposter syndrome, the insufficiency that this may come with, it ends up with a lot of gatekeeping behavior. And because the African, from historical to now, the African person was and to a large degree it still is a very spiritual being. Our spiritual leaders from time immemorial to now hold a very strong sway about psyche, behavior, and everything. So these insecure individuals, when they come together, can end up gatekeeping churches and religious places. Their entire church organizations that are really, Posa can start a church and it is her church. She has everything. So imagine an insecure Posa at the head of a church. She's going to do a lot of gatekeeping. And what that will mean is Tony, who's a brilliant social media guy, comes in and he feels his posture should be to be told. and not to act up. And yes, so I've said a lot of things to just try and explain the whole gatekeeping mindset as one of the causes for organization silence within churches. So first is the secular spiritual divide. Secondly is the gatekeeping. The third thing is what we call extractive discipleship as opposed to relational discipleship. Kizungu kubwa, big English. But let me explain what that means. So I'm a big proponent of the gospel. I believe it is powerful. I believe it is practical. However, it is carried by human beings. And the initial conveyors of the gospel to the African continent came with their own culture. In this case, most of them were Europeans or Americans. And so what they did is they brought both gospel and culture. And the model of evangelism that was then used was one where for you to become Christian, you are extracted from your silo or from your culture, okay? And you had to almost be changed and cultured for you to be a Christian. That idea has never quite left us. So we don't seem, many church circles have not yet learned how do I disciple Syria if maybe Syria is coming from Maasai culture, where they are polygamous and they live a certain way. We have not yet properly done a good job of how do I disciple Syria so that she can continue living in Maasai culture as a Maasai culture, but as a Christian. It almost always seems for Syria to be a true Christian, she has to almost be removed from the Maasai culture in her view, her taste, her looks, her dress, for her to be able to belong. What that does is two things. Number one, it is very painful removing Syria from her culture. Okay, very, 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 very painful. And then once she has endured the pain and finally become a Christian, she's an alien to her people. Okay, and here I'm using Maasai, but you can almost just think of any subculture, whether it's your work subculture, your home subculture, your estate subculture. So our evangelism ethos has been one that is more extractive, that removes people from their silos. And what means is your silo ends up hating Christianity because it made them lose a friend, and you end up living in pain because you've been extracted from your parent culture. Now, what that means is this. I am here operating within a space that has not taught me how to reconcile my faith and my everyday life. And besides that, I don't have a fallback group, from where I initially come from. So for me to endure the pain as a member, I just go silent. I quiet quit. I am here coasting through because I want the friendship, I want the associations, I want the friends. And I'm not able to bring 100% of me into all of this situation. So I think the final fourth thing is a theology that was taught that is about, let me finish explaining. The opposite of an extractive thing is a relational discipleship model is the one of Arodi is rolling amongst, fellow HRs. How do we help him be able to take the gospel and make him relationally live amongst HRs? That is what a relational discipleship equipment would be able to do. What that does is it allows Arodi to inhabit a world he knows and be able to, at the same time, enjoy the gospel that he has come to believe in. And if that was a solution, then it allows when Arodi is showing up in church subsequently, he's going to be 100% of himself. Now, all those factors that I have mentioned contribute to organization silence, because what it means is I'm not well equipped to live my faith in the world. I don't have a true network of authentic people who are like me. I am feeling the pain of being extracted from my silo, all of that. And when I'm showing up to a space where a leader or a set of leaders who are insecure or overzealous or over-conservative are gatekeeping. when all of this happens, it becomes too much to begin pushing, or I want to bring my ISO standards into church and everything. Members end up saying, like, you know what, I will quiet quit. I will just be present. I'll give my tithe, but I will not bring in my influence or any of my ideas to bear upon the faith and its direction. Of course, the end result is many churches then end up operating very suboptimally. And that's a very polite Sunday way of saying mediocrity, with a lot of mediocrity. And then quite a number of them then end up being very irrelevant to the culture because they are extricated from the very culture they need to begin impacting. The end result is you begin then noticing the Zillennials and the Gen Alpha are big on speaking about decolonizing Christianity, especially within Africa. It's part of this is people who have, I think, become silent of quiet quitting or seeing an extractive faith functioning within their community, trying to restate or restake their faith back. So to your Mashakura question, that is my Mashakura response.
Okay. Any before Tony answers the question, any follow-up, Syria, Andrew, Tom? We just nod and go ahead. Dio.
You see, Andrew and Tom, the examples were entirely anecdotal. The organizers are not responsible for any harm caused.
No. Syria needs to explain why she hasn't helped the church with her church. Yeah. I think it's just a comment, and this is from my personal experience, so I'm honest about who I am as a person. I have been brought up with Christian beliefs and a Christian, shall we say, my morality is shaped by Christianity, but I wouldn't define myself as a devout Christian, and part of the reason for that is, as strange as this may sound, on certain levels, I've never really found the church to be welcoming. And what that means, there's years ago that I went to one of my relatives who's a very devout Christian, and I asked what it takes to be a member of their church. And the first item on the list was that you needed to be a born-again Christian. And I never really understood what it was that bothered me about that statement until I was much older. And what it was that the way I see Christianity, I'm like, what if I am still trying to figure out where I stand in my faith? But the first thing that you've told me is that if I am not sure, then this is not the place for me. So the gatekeeping thing that Saya mentioned, I think is a very big aspect, and I don't think there's a recognition even within the church. How many people within, and we all come from families with loads of Christians. If I was to ask you, how many people would be able to engage in a theological discussion with an atheist? And very few of our people could have a civil conversation about that. And my question is always, if you cannot engage with the people that have a very, not even less faith than you, but a different faith from you, if you cannot engage with their ideas authentically, what hope do you have of ever convincing them that your religion is the right religion, that your faith is the right faith? So it's one of the things that concerns me about society, and bringing this back to quiet quitting, even within corporate engagements, is that I sometimes get concerned that as a society, we're losing the ability to engage with an idea without necessarily agreeing with it. Where I can have a conversation with someone who has a differing view from me, and we talk about it. I give them my points, they give me theirs, we engage, we disagree, and at the end of it, you say, okay, I don't agree with you. I have a better understanding of where you come from, and I hope you have a better understanding of where I come from. And that way is when you can find common ground. But I think we're losing that ability as a society. Like I get worried when I see a lot of things, and I know this is very prevalent in the States, where things have become so partisan. And it's pretty much the lines have been drawn, and if you're not with us, you're against us. And you're like, how does that work? You know, because there's some people who have conservative views. And by conservative, I don't mean the conservative Republican Party, but conservatism as it would be described the world over. There's some people who have conservative views on certain issues and have more liberal views on other issues, you know. So when we find that we're losing the ability to engage in discourse in a civil manner when we disagree, that's a very worrying point for a society. And I that's why I'm always willing to have these conversations, because I think we need to find the ways in which we can actually talk to each other when we don't agree with each other, and see if we can find that common ground, you know, because we have much more in the way of similarities than we do in the way of differences, but we tend to highlight the differences as we proceed.
Okay, Syria and Tom or Tony can go ahead and answer the question.
I think we need Tony's voice.
Okay, Tony Amka. Yes.
Which question are we answering? Hi, everybody, and thank you for waiting. I was in a Sunday training at the coast, and the heat is killing me. And I
Training, is that what we're calling it nowadays? Training.
Yes, and that's what we're calling it nowadays.
I wanted you to take a stab at Nora's question. Did you open it up? I can repaste it for it to.
You can repaste it, because when I joined, I think it had already been asked, so I didn't get it.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
And just as Tony, redigest this question. On the gatekeeping part, I feel like, especially in the civil service, let me put on my doctor hat for 2 seconds. For we in the civil service who, the people who went before us in the civil service were like the preachers of them days. They were not as educated. And the new entrants of the civil service are better educated. And some of us have had to hide our other advanced degrees because of the gatekeeping. And you can just see like someone really wants you out of that space because you're better educated, you are a better manager, and you might not really want that job, but they are just, no, this is not quite firing you. They loudly fire you by just elbowing you out completely. Is this still the case, or is gatekeeping still a thing? Not just even in private corporates too. So I see you nodding like
So I used to be a lecturer. Yeah. The other day I realized my career has been more like an artist, drawing various paintings. So in one of my paintings, I was a lecturer for some time, and I was at one point lecturing 3 different classes. One class was your normal students, normal, like finished high school, they're continuing. And then one particular class was individuals who had done their diploma years ago, have tons of years of experience, but then now have come to upgrade to degree levels. And as a lecturer, you could tell the difference between those 2 cohorts night and day. Of course, one is the conversations during break time. The upgrading class, their break time conversations are, did that cement come in? The barbed wire, tell that fundi. Those are the phone calls they make during their, these other ones are always asking each other, so where's the party? When are we? Very different conversation. But then the second thing is you can clearly see the upgrading ones have tuned off in class, like completely tuned off. Like what they basically brought is their bodies to be given a degree to go and secure their jobs, or elbow the younger guys who are coming into the job market to do. And Your that batch of students, like I think in the whole class, I only had like 2 or 3 students I could confidently say, this one is serious, these 2 are focused. Some of the students were so poor, after writing the exam, they would hand it over and say, hey, Mwalimu, now please, you can see what you can do about it. You know, you meet students who want to openly bribe you and stuff. And it's because you could, when you finally get to sit with them, it was fear. It was panic that had brought them to school and not the desire to learn or to upskill. And meanwhile, when you sat with the younger guys and asked them about the experience at workplace, you almost always got that sense for like, yo, the older folk are extremely threatened, they are overburdening us, they are shouting at us, they are elbowing. Then in another phase of my life, I have been helping individuals with their career transition. And I noticed something speaking to people in various corners in Kenya is, if you have very many advanced papers, you need to be strategic when you're putting a CV going into, so there are certain places when you're applying, you don't put in all your paperwork, okay? Because you'll be more qualified than the guy interviewing you, and it doesn't normally work well. So most people try a strategy of, hey, let me just give enough, get my foot into the door, or try to get in through an internship. And it is only once when I'm in that I can now begin telling HR, not even my manager, I can tell HR what else it is I have done, so that like in government, when a time comes to be considered, these things can be done. Is it getting better? I hope so that it is getting better, but is it something I have experienced? Yes, both from the classroom side and also from the job market and the job search side. And at its core, just wearing for a minute my pastoral hat, it speaks not more to quiet quitting, but it just speaks to human nature. That when the human nature is threatened, it can be able to resort to diverse things, including very desperate, very desperate things.
Okay. Tony, are you ready?
I can take a stab at it, yes.
Okay.
First of all, I want to appreciate, thank you very much. I want to appreciate Saya and Andrew. I have listened to, I walked in on Tom, so it was also fantastic to just listen to those comments.
Gentlemen. No, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
I go on? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've seen the question about this lady who is working for a family-owned business, and she feels like she's quite quitting, and the HR also feels the same way, and she's asking what she should do. I feel the part of her trying to give feedback is a good thing. The knowledge that these people may not take the feedback is also a good thing. So we are operating beginning from what we know. What we know is that they probably will not take feedback. What we know is they probably are blind to their faults, or they have chosen to not care. But if she is able to give some feedback, I think she should. And having worked with them, she would probably know how the best way to communicate to them. Because it is good to give the feedback, even if they will not take it. And in giving feedback, it's more about how you communicate it. It's not necessarily what you say. If she can figure out how to address feedback correctly, because feedback is not necessarily something that we enjoy listening to because we've not been trained to give it properly. So if she is able to talk about, pick a format, for instance, there's a format I like called AID, action, what actions she feels they are doing that are jeopardizing their business. If she would be able to put it in that sense, these actions are jeopardizing your business because they have the following impact on your business, and then perhaps give a suggestion, this is what I feel you should do or you could do different. If she was able to give feedback that way, perhaps they might see it in a different way. She needs to ask herself what's in it for them. That's for the feedback part. Going back, whether she should quit. He has already quit quietly, and so has the HR. So as a person who believes, personally, I believe in finding your X factor, finding what you do well, finding work that gives you purpose, that gives you mission, work that you enjoy going to do, work where you create impact that matters, work where you make a difference. I would actually ask her to look for a different job. I would actually tell her to use her networks to fire up her CV, fix her LinkedIn, and look for a different job. If you are not fulfilled, if you are not giving your best, if you have quietly quit, then you should look for a different job.
Let me jump in before we, and thanks a lot, Tony, for that, the feedback you provided. I always tell people that resignation is a human right. So whenever you feel that you're at a point where you're not able to continue the relationship with your employer, then you have to take advantage of that right. That said, specifically in regards to this scenario where you're working with a family business, one thing that I've realized over time is that families will tend to really hold on to their businesses or their companies. They take a while to really disconnect from that and allow professionals to come in. It's not unusual. So it's just like you seeing your kid growing until they're almost becoming 18, they're 16, you're worried about do you want them to go to the world or not? The other day, one of my kids, my son who is 2 years old, 2.5 years old, was asking me if he can go and play outside for the first time alone. And I was like, yes. He just said goodbye and went. I was a little bit uncomfortable, but I let him go. It's the same thing that these business owners would feel. They see the organization grow, but they have this, there's this attachment that they have in terms of how far they have seen themselves come from to where they're heading. And allowing this professional input sometimes feels like they're letting go in a way, and that makes them feel uncomfortable. What I would suggest at this point is start by developing policies and guidelines to guide the organization. If at all it's a HR, you have HR issues that need to be addressed. Can you start by developing a HR policy and guidelines for working in the organization? Involve these owners so that they take part in that. They appreciate what order this is going to bring. They appreciate the reduction in litigation and the risks and the like. Finance the same way. Develop procedures and policies and forms and the like. Walk them through it. Let them have the buy-in. Once they see that, then they can easily start allowing you to give that advisory, because one, you proved yourself that this is a profession that you're able to discharge and you're able to guide them. Then the other bit is also to appreciate that business owners, or rather people who own family-run businesses, will tend to ask a professional opinion from a lot of people. I know as a HR professional that I get asked, there are people I know who run very established organizations, but being that they were founders, they would also have some elements of doubt in terms of what their HR is saying to them, for example, and they would reach out to me. So it means these other people you're working with can also reach out to some other finance person they are looking for, another HR person to ask for an opinion. They're not charging them essentially, but they're just picking their brains. And therefore, sometimes you have to, apart from these policies, you also need to make sure that your professional advisory also stands out. So make sure that whatever you're giving them an advisory stands the test of time. If someone else gives them an advisory, it is similar to what you're saying, so that they develop that confidence in you. So those are the two ways in which I would propose that you explore. And if that doesn't work, like Tony says, take advantage of your right to resign. It's a human right.
Okay. I think we need to have brunch and people need to eat in Kenya. But if the panelists can just do like your take home, like what would you advise people? What your take home on quiet quitting, quiet firing, and then tufunge kituo. And if you have a question, we are very democratic. You can raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk. So ladies first, Syria, you're up.
All right. I think this has been a very interesting conversation. My takeaway, or my 2 cents, or my closing statements about quiet quitting is to ask yourself, why are you quiet quitting? There was a question in the chat regarding why we are reacting to the term quiet quitting, yet it has been there long before the term quiet quitting came. And for me, I think it's a matter of communication. It's very easy to understand quiet quitting as opposed to going to dig in to understand what disengagement is. And so it's a matter of communication. We now, or most people now, understand the simplicity of what quiet quitting is. And so my advice to anyone who is feeling like they're quiet quitting is the question why. Because you could move to another organization and find the same problems. In fact, most of the time, it is the same forest with different monkeys. So you will go to a different organization, find the same problems, and then react the same way. So the question to ask yourself is, why am I feeling this way? Is it the organization and I love what I do, and therefore I need to find an organization that treats me well, but I do the same job? Or is it that this is not my intended purpose? This is not where my strengths or superpowers lie. And so I need to figure out, what should I be doing in terms of work? I need to figure out, get in touch with a coach, find somebody to have a conversation with to help you understand what is the work that I should be doing that will give me fulfillment, that will wake me up in the morning with the energy to go and do the work that I would do for free, essentially, because then you have continuous motivation for the job. You will get over so many challenges because you enjoy the job. So for me, the question should be, why am I feeling this way? Why am I disengaged? Once you have answered that question, then it becomes very easy to either resign, to start looking for a job that is aligned to what it is you want to do, or to move to an organization whose culture you connect with, whose culture and ways of leadership and remuneration, whatever it is you're looking for, it is easier then to say, that is where I want to work. What does it take for me to get there? Or this is the career I want to get into. What does it take for me to get there? But answering the question why is very, very important. And I will pass it over to Andrew because he's right next to me on my screen.
Yes.
No problem. Thanks for that, Syria. And actually, the last things that I would say tie into something that Syria has said. I know that I've spoken a lot about the leadership and how leadership is important in this conversation. I think one of the angle of leadership that has to be considered is leadership of yourself, because as an individual, the responsibility for your life is your own, and the responsibility for your career is your own. You are not powerless. You have control over the things that you can do. While you might not have the control over the organization that you're in, and you might not have the ability to change the organization that you're in, the only thing that you can ever control is yourself. If you feel you've been passed over for promotion several times and you're feeling they're not recognizing me, the first place to look is inside. Am I genuinely deserving of this? Have I developed my skills? Am I growing? Am I the same person that I was a few years ago? Or have I grown and matured? Have my skill sets grown? Or am I just the same person that was doing the job 10 years ago, just with more seniority now? And when you can reflect internally, and don't beat yourself over the head if you find that you're wanting in certain areas, it should be more of, it's my responsibility to change this if I want it to change and if it needs to change. Whether that change is putting yourself in a situation where you gather more skills by doing a course or training or something, whether it's engaging with external parties like coaches or even just friends, professionals that can hold you accountable, that can say, actually, this is something that you could do better, this, that, and the other, or whether it's taking the responsibility of dealing with the fear of changing jobs. This is a different world that we live in from the ones that our parents grew up in. I have worked in 3 different countries, over the course of my career. That was not necessarily the case for my father. And I don't consider that to be something that's unique for me, because it's the nature of the world that we're in right now, that the opportunities are beyond our national borders, our continental borders, into all over the world. So if where you are does not work for you, the responsibility is on you to figure out how you move forward thereafter, because your life is your responsibility and how you move forward is up to you.
Thank you. So we will interrupt the closing statements because I was about to say CNN, SNN Realtor. Go ask a question. SNN. Uliza swali. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity, and much appreciation to the speakers, everyone who has spoken to us. It's been a very great enlightenment. Now, I had just some 2 clarifications to ask, or I needed insights from either of you. Is it usually like when someone is quite quitting, is it because they're not sure about their next moves, like they're like kind of testing the waters while in a permanent situation, like is it a risk assessment kind of thing that they do, or is it also like they don't want to create turbulence, they want to live? To them, this is like quiet time. They're like trying to protect their existing relationship, the network they've already created from where they're at. Is it just mostly about our mental state? What do you think? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to take a stab at that?
Let me go as I provide my last statements. Like Andrew said in the beginning of our conversation, it's been 2 hours since we began, so I totally understand. Quiet quitting can also be triggered by the idea. Someone can hold onto a job while quiet quit because they still want to try what is out there they're seeking out. It's not unusual. And like Syria mentioned, I wouldn't call it so much of a new concept. Syria was talking about employee engagement, which truly it is. So there are those moments where people want to put one foot in, and then the other limbs are out there searching and seeing if the water has something to provide for them. But that said, we were mainly focusing on some of the triggers that might make people quiet quit: lack of recognition, realizing that they're not doing the same amount of work like other people, they are being underpaid, the managers are not listening to them. So those are some of the ways in which people can be triggered to quiet quit. That said, for me, I'd like to address the managers particularly as potential agents of or potential catalysts of quiet quitting in their team members. It would be nice for you to make your team members feel part of the organization. Involve them in decision making as far as is possible. Some decisions you do not have to involve your team members, but you need to explain to them why certain decisions have been made. It makes them really appreciate that they're part of the team. Listen to some of the inputs that they provide in some of these conversations. Therefore, you can come back to them and tell them, in that meeting that I had with the senior management team, these considerations were made, but these are the circumstances we are having, and as such, we have made these decisions. Make them appreciate the fact that they were listened to, their voices were escalated, and feedback was provided to them. It's also important for you to, as managers, like I mentioned at one point, to truly recalibrate the PDs, the position description. Have a look at what is being done by your team members, evaluate them, revise them, so that you don't have the situation where you're claiming that your team member is quiet quitting because they're not doing task X and Y, but it's because you've not added it to the job description, you've not had a conversation about it, and therefore both of you actually don't think that that is something that they need to do, and that miscommunication can cause some discomfort. It's also important for managers and organizations to run surveys satisfaction surveys, engagement surveys. Those surveys make a big difference. Usually they give very uncomfortable results to some level. There's some parameters that give very uncomfortable results. But it's important for organizations to actually roll them out, share the results, just share those results. Usually they can give you very bad scores at some point. Just share them, share their commitments to improve on some of those aspects that are raised, so that your employees feel like you are actually listening to some of the things that they are mentioning. The other bit is also to have regular check-ins with your team members, have regular meetings that are actually scheduled. Bi-weekly or weekly, say every Tuesday at 2 to 3, I'm having a meeting with you. And as a manager, speak last. Let your team member come in, explain what they are going through, what they want you to do, and then you summarize that call by giving your thoughts for what they have submitted, and also give some of the ways forward moving from that call. Don't be that manager who calls a meeting and you're the one who is speaking for 35 minutes out, 25 out of 30 minutes. It makes them start checking out and actually quite quit even in those meetings, so to speak. Then do make sure that you also reward and recognize what makes your team excited. Reward them for work well done. Understand what really takes them. Not every team member reacts the same way. Not every human being feels excited about the same thing. So do understand what really excites them. There are people who get very excited about time offs, for example. There are people who just want, if I've gone an extra mile to work on weekends or gone to another country, I want to take time off in lieu of all that period I took, while there's someone who wants an extra coin for that extra time. So find out if your policies provide for either of them. If one prefers one over the other, let them take what they feel comfortable with, and that helps them become excited about working in your team. So basically, I think, and also the other bit, lastly, is to make sure there's a boundary. Respect the boundaries between your work, the work life of your colleague, of your team members, and their life as well. Because you don't want to have situations where you are on your colleagues, on your team members' necks at 8:30 p.m. asking them about a report that they put on your table at 3 p.m. which you fail to read. It makes them quite exhausted, burnout setting, and then there's a thin line between a burnout and quiet quitting, and then you end up mixing up the two and quiet firing and the like. So have that awareness of where those boundaries lie. I will hand it over to Tony, I think. Yeah. But
could you, Hillary is asking, how should we run the one-on-one meetings? Can it be a text or me who hates meetings, or an email?
You don't come with that cap that is written, can this meeting be a text message? Or can be this, I survived a meeting that should have been an email. Ideally, I think what I've done in my case, and I have several team members who report to me, is I have a meeting with them, and then I ask them, how regular would you want us to touch base on various issues that arise in the course of your work? So one, I make sure that they understand that my lines are open. You can WhatsApp me, you can team message me, you can Skype me for anything that comes in the course of the day. And also you can just call me impromptu based on what is coming up. And then once they agree, because one team member will tell you, I'm okay with you speaking to me every week. Just start with that every week. With time, there are meetings that will have nothing to talk about. Then you start knocking them off because nothing has come up this week, push it to next week. So just put them on the calendar, but agree that you'll be knocking them out depending on what has come up or what has not come out. And it can come from either side. So you can reach out and tell them on Thursday that tomorrow is Friday, I am not having any much on my radar today. We can knock out the meeting, and the supervisor can also say, oh, actually, I don't have anything else. So you have those kind of conversations and knock them out as they go. And then there are those people who say that they want to speak to you on a monthly basis. Allow them that chance. So have that conversation first, and then you agree on the timelines, and then agree also that the lines are open. So you don't wait until 25th of July to tell Andrew that he had not done some great work on a certain assignment. That is not actually how it should be. That makes the meetings very uncomfortable for your team member.
Just one thing to add onto what Tom just said and related to engaging with your team. Fully that it's important for you to have regular scheduled engagements with your teams. I think it's also important to distinguish slightly between engagements that you have, which is tagging up and getting feedback on work, and also occasionally, maybe once every month or something, just tagging up and getting feedback from the team member about themselves. Not something related to work tasks, but and not that you're forcing them or asking them to give you intimate details about themselves and their lives, but understanding what's going on with them. You don't, maybe the reason someone's not performing in work properly is because their father is sick, and that's stressing them, or there's a problem with a bill that they're trying to figure out. Sometimes it may be something like, I was renovating the house and the contractor's messed up and now my house is flooded. It's stressing me, so finding a little bit of time to have those conversations where you're just engaging as human beings to say, just how are things going? What's happening with you? What's on your mind? What are the things that maybe the person might have some insights for you, but if not, it'll give you an understanding of what's happening. And then on a much more, this one doesn't have to be every time, but every 3 months, every whatever, take some time to meet socially. It doesn't have to be like you're meeting in the evening and spending the whole night drinking, or you're spending a whole lot of money on a company dinner. It might be that you just say, listen, as a team, on this one Friday, once every 6 months, let's take Friday afternoon, let's go have a coffee as a team. We just sit down, have a coffee, laugh about it, argue about whatever it is that you want to argue about. The World Cup is taking place and you're saying this guy, but it's to the point that Syria made, which is, I found it funny because I think exactly the same way, that there is no such thing as a work-life balance. Work is a part of your life, so you can't separate them. You shouldn't separate them. You are a human being, and engaging with the people that you work with as human beings is important. So in addition to discussing work, take a little bit of time every so often to discuss things on a personal human level.
Tony, you're up. I know. Okay.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Good. So I want to agree with my previous speakers, and I want to just add a detail that we all have a circle of influence. And if someone is feeling like quiet quitting, they should ask the why that Syria was asking, and seek to see what in their circle of influence they can influence, what they can do more. Because when you discover what your circle of influence is and you expand it, you unleash resources that you didn't know you had. You unleash hidden resources. And that can help you be more clear about whether you want to really quit, whether the problem is with you or with the organization, because there are many, many reasons why we quiet quit. Many, many reasons. And sometimes it is us, sometimes it is the organization. And to speak into what Tom had said, actually it is Andrew, actually no, it was Tom who was talking to the managers, because the managers really, we quit it. The research says that we quit bad managers. So there is something to be said about managers and how they lead people. And I just want to add some details to what Andrew and Tom are saying, that we actually need to make the one-on-one so important. They are such an important part of what we do. They are diarized. They are things that we are doing. It's part of how we plan our work. It's part of people management, so that the people feel cared for. And like Andrew is saying, the people know that their holistic life matters. That if they had an issue with, like what Andrew is saying, a plumber, and they are stressed, it matters because it actually affects how they perform. And when we diarize those, when we make them regular and we're not postponing them, we are giving these people a lifeline to communicate with us so that we are always in the know what is going on with their lives, so that the back and the communications lines are so open, and we are even inculcating a culture of giving and receiving feedback, so that if something is going wrong, we are able to stem it earlier because we are creating trust. And I like what Andrew is saying. It doesn't have to be about work. It is a one-on-one meeting. And I even have a fair structure that I actually found online when I was training, that you can actually have a meeting that is a 30-minute meeting where the first 30 minutes is about what's going on with your report. What is going on with them? What would they like to share with you? The second third of the hour or the third of the 30 minutes is what is going on with you and work, you, the leader. And then the third one is now about what can we agree on, so that the next time we meet, we can pick up on the same 3 issues. We can talk about what's going on with you, what's going on with me and work, the leader, and then from where the last time we met about work, have you been able to finish this? Have you been able to move on with this? And in terms of your career progression, do you think that you are progressing? Do you like it here? And that's a question that many managers are afraid to ask their people, which we should ask them. Are you happy to be here? Because some of them are not. And if they're not, they are a liability to you and they will quiet quit. So just wanted to add a bit more oomph to the points that were raised by these wonderful people, Siri and these 2 gentlemen, as my parting shots. And that's it.
Okay, the quad will be back next year, right? I think we made it a yearly thing, right? This, yeah,
Sylvia is falling off her seat.
I'm like, next year is so far away. What?
It's
I know,
June.
right?
And if you're willing to come back, you know, I'm always there, but getting the 4 of you together is usually hard. So yes, but at least let's have a standing order for once a year. It makes my heart full. Okay. Saya, the Ndonga who was given English, go ahead.
All Dongas were given English. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for not quitting and being here. And yeah, the quad group, Fosa is not quite firing you for a year. Please make sure you can come sooner than that. One thing I want to say is today's discussion has been heavy on the workplace, and the same principles are true about other human relationships. It's very possible to quite quit on our intimate friendships, to quite quit on our faith. So diagnose and apply those principles accordingly. My key takeaway listening to the brilliant minds that have contributed today is quiet quitting is a symptom. It's not the disease. And if you then become focused on the why, trying to make people speak up without going under the hood and being able to look at the engine, which is what's a culture, what's the level of safety, how much openness do we have, what's the level of awareness, how empowered the individuals feeling when it's. So the sense I get is, this is me just wearing my biology hat here, is the same way the human body is programmed in periods of danger to either fight, flee, or freeze, is the same way an organization as an organism would work. That I think the normal response of people would be to either fight by voicing concerns, but if the force is either non-responsive or so overwhelming, they will either flee, which is normally people running away to other jobs, or quiet quitting is a third one, they will freeze. And so rather than us as trying to unfreeze people out of their frozen work situation, it is to begin figuring out what's the stimulus. Is it the unresponsive boss? Is it the toxic workplace? At the end of the day, culture is the product of what we praise and what we punish. So let's just be keen and aware about what it is we praise and what it is we punish, because that culture creates the stimulus. And from that stimulus, if we're not able to fight or flee, we will remain in place. I like the apostle put it, handcuffed with golden handcuffs and all frozen, not giving the very best. And back to where we started from is the biggest problem with quiet quitting is something dies, either our potential, either the organization's potential, and in some cases, something valuable like a relationship. And in extreme cases, as a result of quiet quitting, an individual can literally die. Let's not allow any of this to happen. So thank you, Mudachi. Thank you, Wajohi. Thank you, Syria. And thank you, Arodi, for sharing your expertise. And thank you, Paul, for being the facilitator again today. And for everyone who made it here and online, we genuinely celebrate you. We'll be posting this to our, if you want another 2 hours, we'll be posting it to, there's a specific YouTube channel where we put this for people who want to watch later. So please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It's called exactly the same name, Authentic Dialogue. So just look for it online and show some love and subscribe there, and you can get past episodes there. Also, there's the other YouTube channel for the thing we're doing. It's by my name, Saya Jackson. So you can either look for those 2 YouTube channels, Authentic Dialogues, and there's the Saya Jackson channel. Like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on our other handles, which is One Saya Jackson on Instagram, One Saya Jackson on TikTok, and also Authentic Dialogues with Saya Jackson on Facebook. We genuinely want to know your questions, we want to know your concerns, we want to know your feedback so that we can serve you better. In June, I think we're doing quick fire. So normally we have 2 sessions per month spaced after 2 weeks. But the way the math this time has worked is, boy, if I'm not wrong, we're having our session next weekend, right? So next week we're having our session, which is it's basically talking about retirement. But hey, before you think this is just a session for your aging parents or your mom, please, we're talking about the 4 horsemen of retirement. What are the 4 challenges? And rather than wait until retire for you to discover this, or rather than you becoming frustrated with somebody who's in the retirement phase whom you either have to take care of or live with, I think this is a session that you really want to learn for either understanding somebody going through retirement or preparing for your own retirement today. So please make time, and you will get the poster and the timings exactly through the same normal channels. So next week, 10 a.m. Eastern United States time, which is 5 p.m. East African time. Please make the date to be there. Parting shot is the difference between quit and quiet is the position of the E. So some people you may be imagining are quite happy, may really not be quite happy. You just need to move the E in front of the T to truly understand where they are. And the difference between being quite happy and being quiet has to do with one letter E, that's engaging. So let's engage our friends, our family, our managers, our employees, so that the E will be in the right place. They will be quite happy to be with us and not quietly quitting on us. We will end the normal session, and then normally there's behind the tent. What we do behind the tent is, if you have a question that you don't want to linger on the internet and you want it addressed, that's a time to do so. And also, I think it's normally the time also our panelists, if you want to engage, like you want to know, hey, I want to get services from any one of them, that's normally a nice time to get any of their contacts, but we will also share as a link to our respective broadcasts that we'll put there. So God bless all of you and see you next time. Or you can do your thing.